Fall is here, the harvest is in, but instead of well-deserved rest, you're faced with mountains of garden debris, weeds, and fallen leaves. Sound familiar? Your first instinct might be to burn it all, or just haul it away. Hold on, you're about to toss out a true treasure. Today, I'm going to show you how to turn this garden junk into a premium fertilizer, often called black gold. We'll break down a simple, easy-to-follow recipe for perfect fall compost that will make your garden soil vibrant and fertile, completely chemical-free. But before we dive in, let's ditch the idea that compost is just some stinky, decaying pit. In reality, it's a controlled process where we're essentially building a 5-star hotel for billions of microscopic workers. Our job is to provide them with the right menu and comfortable living conditions, and they'll do all the dirty work for us. Trust me, it's easier than it sounds. So let's start with a classic autumn scene. The harvest is gathered, pantry shelves are stocked with preserves, and a wonderful feeling of accomplishment fills the air. But step outside into the garden, and that feeling often gives way to a slight sigh. Before you stand literal mountains of withered plants, decaying leaves, and spent stalks. It looks like nothing more than garden waste, something you just want to clear away as quickly as possible. This is precisely where many home gardeners make their biggest mistake. They see a problem that needs solving and reach for a wheelbarrow, or even matches. But I'm here to tell you, see this not as a problem, but as an enormous opportunity. Look at those piles differently. All these plant remains? They're not waste. This is your starting capital. This is priceless raw material from which we'll build a true fertility factory right in your own backyard. Every single leaf, every stem is an investment in the health of your soil for the coming year. It's your future harvest, just lying right there at your feet. Many gardeners, when they hear the word compost, immediately picture something rather unpleasant. A foul-smelling, rotting heap tucked away in the furthest corner of the yard, something they'd rather not go near. This common misconception is the primary reason many shy away from this wonderful practice. But let's be clear from the outset. Our compost will be nothing like that unsightly image. Properly prepared compost isn't a mere waste pile. It's a living, breathing organism. Picture a colossal beehive. But instead of bees, it's teeming with billions of bacteria, fungi, and earthworms, all hard at work. This is a highly organised process where there's no room for putrid decay, only creation. Our task isn't simply to haphazardly pile everything up and wait for magic to happen. Instead, we become the orchestrators of this tiny ecosystem, creating ideal conditions for its unseen workers. And trust me, they will generously reward us with a product far superior to anything you could ever purchase at a garden centre. Now let's talk about the most common mistake, one that even experienced gardeners often make. It's the belief that you can simply throw everything into one pile and let nature sort it out. While that might sound logical, in reality, this approach more often leads to disappointment. You'll either end up with a slimy, foul-smelling mess, or a dry, compacted heap that shows no change even after a year. The key to success is realising that our tiny microbial helpers have their own distinct gastronomic preferences. They need a balanced diet. So, before we even think about constructing our compost lasagna, we first need to learn how to properly sort our ingredients. Everything destined for the compost pile needs to be separated into two large and crucial categories. Indeed, the right balance between these two categories is precisely what determines whether we ultimately produce precious black gold or just a pile of unusable waste. All right, let's talk about our first category. We'll call them the greens. These are your nitrogen powerhouses. Nitrogen, essentially, acts like protein for microorganisms. It's the energy boost that kickstarts and heats up the entire composting process. So, what falls into this category? Primarily, we're talking about fresh, vibrant plant material. Think freshly pulled weeds, but make sure they haven't gone to seed. We definitely don't want to spread them around. Vegetable trimmings like carrot tops, beet greens, zucchini, and cucumber scraps are all excellent green materials. Freshly mowed lawn clippings also fit right in. And if you happen to keep rabbits or chickens, their manure mixed with bedding is an absolute nitrogen bomb, a super booster for your compost pile. Even many common kitchen scraps like vegetable peels and coffee grounds belong to this same green team. Remember this simple rule: anything that's fresh, moist and green, that's your essential energy source for healthy compost. Now let's talk about our second team, the browns. If the greens are all about energy and protein, then the browns are your go-to for carbohydrates and fibre. Their role is just as crucial. The carbon supplied by browns serves as the essential building material for the microorganisms themselves. What's more, brown components ensure our future compost is loose, airy, and well-structured. They prevent the pile from compacting into a dense, airless mass. So, what kinds of materials belong in this category? The most abundant autumn gift, of course, is dry, fallen leaves. Don't be too quick to burn them. They are an invaluable brown material. This category also includes shredded twigs and small branches left over from pruning trees and shrubs, straw, hay, sawdust, old newspapers, avoiding glossy-coloured print, and cardboard boxes. These are all excellent sources of carbon. Remember this simple rule: anything that's dry, solid and rustly forms the skeleton and lungs of your future compost. And here's the main secret, the golden rule that separates perfect compost from a stinky mess. Imagine you're baking a layered cake. For every 1 part of moist, green ingredients, you'll want to add about 2, or even better, 3 parts of dry, brown materials. Remember this simple formula: roughly 1 part nitrogen to 2 or 3 parts carbon. Why is this so critical? If you overdo it with the greens, your pile will quickly become waterlogged, anaerobic, and turn into a slimy, stinky mess that reeks of ammonia. But if you put in too many browns, the decomposition process simply won't start. Your pile will just sit there, dry and cold for ages, because the bacteria won't have the nitrogen they need. No food, no energy to get going. This perfect balance creates the ideal environment, just moist enough, airy enough, and with plenty of both fuel and building blocks for our tiny microbial helpers. Now let's talk about preparing your compost ingredients. Imagine you're trying to eat a whole watermelon. You wouldn't try to swallow it in one go, right? You'd cut it into manageable pieces. It's the same principle with the microorganisms in your compost. They don't have teeth to chew through giant corn stalks or entire cabbage heads. The more surface area available for them to work on, the faster they can break things down. So, the golden rule for preparation is this: chop up everything you can. Thick stems from sunflowers, tomatoes, or tough cabbage cores should be chopped down to 5 to 10 centimetre pieces using a shovel or garden shears. Smaller branches are perfect for running through a garden shredder if you have access to one. If not, no worries. Just use a small hatchet to chop them up. Even dry leaves benefit from being shredded. You can easily do this by running over them with your lawnmower. This simple step won't just speed up your compost's decomposition by weeks, but by months. Alright, now for a really crucial point. Let's create a do not compost list. These are the items that absolutely must not go into your compost pile. Ignoring this list could turn your valuable future fertilizer into a biological weapon against your own garden. First and foremost, exclude any plant material infected with serious fungal diseases. This primarily means tomatoes and potatoes showing signs of late blight, as well as cucumbers and zucchini suffering from powdery mildew. The spores of these diseases are incredibly resilient. They will happily survive the winter right there in your compost pile, even if it heats up nicely. Then, come spring, you'll unknowingly spread these pathogens across your entire garden plot. Don't risk it. All diseased plant matter should be immediately burned or completely removed from your property. The health of your future harvest is simply too important to compromise. Continuing our blacklist, next up after diseased plants are persistent perennial weeds. This particularly applies to those that spread by rhizomes or root fragments. These plant terminators include notorious varieties like quackgrass, ground elder, and field bindweed. If you toss their roots into your compost pile, you won't kill them. Instead, you'll be creating the perfect breeding ground. They'll happily overwinter in that warm, nutrient-rich environment, and come spring, you'll inadvertently spread them to all your garden beds. The same goes for any weeds that have already gone to seed. For them, the compost pile isn't a grave, it's an ideal incubator. You'll end up with millions of ready-to-germinate seeds, perfectly blended with your wonderful fertilizer. Believe me, this is one gift you definitely don't want. So, when weeding, be careful. If they're root-free and seed-free, welcome them to the compost. Otherwise, they belong on the bonfire. All right, we've got our ingredients sorted. Now let's talk about finding the perfect spot for our fertility kitchen. Your compost pile. Choosing the right location is half the battle. Seriously. The biggest mistake you can make is placing your compost pile in direct, open sunlight. Those direct rays will relentlessly dry it out. You'll find yourself constantly hauling a watering can to keep it moist. And if you don't, the decomposition process will simply grind to a halt. The ideal location is a shady, secluded corner of your garden. Think under the canopy of a large tree or in the shadow of a shed. This way, your pile will be shielded from the scorching sun and retain its valuable moisture. It's also crucial to ensure easy access with a wheelbarrow, as you'll be hauling both raw materials to the pile and finished compost away from it. And one more important point. Never place your composter in a low-lying area where water tends to collect and stagnate. Excess moisture will displace the essential air, and instead of a healthy aerobic decomposition, you'll end up with a smelly, rotting mess. All right, the spot's chosen, and your raw materials are prepared and sorted. Now begins the most creative part, building our compost pile, a process surprisingly similar to making an Italian lasagna. You don't want to simply pile everything together haphazardly. Instead, we'll be arranging the components in careful layers. Right on the ground at the very base, make sure to lay down a drainage layer. This could be thin branches, wood chips, or sunflower stalks. This layer, about 15 to 20 centimetres, or 6 to 8 inches, thick, will prevent the pile from compacting at the bottom and ensure good airflow from below. Next, on top of this drainage layer, we'll place a layer of brown materials, such as dry leaves. And then, over that, add a thinner layer of greens, for example, grass clippings or plant trimmings. Continue to alternate in this manner. A thick layer of dry and airy material, followed by a thinner layer of moist green material. This layering creates the ideal structure and ensures an even distribution of air, moisture and nutrients throughout the entire pile. Our next vital ingredient is water. Without the right moisture level, the composting process simply won't begin. Think of a dry sponge. It's stiff and inactive. But douse it with water and it becomes soft and pliable, ready to do its job. The same principle applies to microorganisms. They can only thrive and work in a moist environment. The ideal moisture level for your compost pile is about that of a well-wrung sponge. When you squeeze a handful of compost, no water should drip out, but your hand should be left feeling moist. So how do you achieve this? If it's a rainy autumn, nature will likely take care of it for you. However, if you're experiencing dry weather, don't hesitate to moisten each layer as you build it. Just give it a good soak with a watering can or hose, and moving forward during extended periods without rain, regularly check your compost pile and dampen it if necessary. Remember, a dried-out pile is a dormant pile. We've already provided our tiny workers with food and water. Now for the third crucial element, air, or more precisely, oxygen. The bacteria responsible for creating healthy, high-quality compost are known as aerobes. These are the ones that absolutely need oxygen to live and do their job. If oxygen isn't present, their place will be taken by another group, anaerobes. And these guys don't compost. They cause putrefaction, releasing unpleasant odours and harmful compounds. To prevent this, our compost pile needs to breathe. How do we help it do that? The simplest and most effective method is regular turning. At least once every 2 to 3 weeks, and ideally once a week. You should grab a pitchfork and thoroughly turn and mix the layers. While it might seem like a daunting task, it actually only takes about 10 to 15 minutes. Turning doesn't just aerate the pile, providing vital oxygen. It also mixes the materials, significantly speeding up the decomposition process. Think of it like adding more fuel to a fire. Things heat up much faster. Walking into any garden centre, you've surely seen those brightly coloured packets on the shelves labelled compost accelerator, bioactivator, and similar products. Marketers claim that without these miracle powders, your compost will take years to break down. Of course, these products do contain beneficial microorganisms and can slightly speed up the process. But let's be honest, in most cases, they're just a waste of money. Why? Because all the necessary bacteria and fungi are already living in your garden. They're in the soil, on fallen leaves, and on other plant debris. You don't need to buy them. You just need to create the right conditions. Want to give your compost pile a little boost and get things moving faster? It couldn't be simpler. Just grab a shovelful of good, living soil from your garden bed or a handful of last year's finished compost and sprinkle it between the layers. This is the best and completely free activator you could ask for. Now let's break down the strategy. When it comes to composting, there are two main approaches, two paths you can take depending on your goals and the time you have available. The first approach is hot composting. This is an active, intensive method. If you do everything correctly, maintaining the right balance of materials, moisture, and frequently turning the pile, it heats up internally to 50 to 60 or even 70 degrees Celsius. At these temperatures, the process happens incredibly fast. In just 1.5 to 2 months, a pile of organic waste transforms into finished compost. What's more, the high temperature effectively kills most weed seeds and harmful pathogens. However, this method demands your active participation. The pile needs to be turned regularly, every 4 to 7 days, to maintain this high temperature process. This is the ideal option for those who want quick results and are willing to put in the necessary effort. The second method is the complete opposite of the first. This is what's known as cold composting, or as some affectionately call it, the lazy gardener's method. It couldn't be simpler. In the autumn, you build your compost pile correctly just once, making sure to layer materials and maintain the right moisture, and that's it. You simply forget about it. There's no need to turn, check, or monitor anything. You just let nature do its work at its own natural, unhurried pace. Of course, the process will be much slower. The pile won't heat up significantly, and you won't get finished compost in 2 months. Instead, you'll likely wait a year, or even a year and a half. But on the flip side, this method requires virtually no effort from you. Simply pile it up and walk away. It's the perfect option if you're short on time, or simply don't want to bother with a pitchfork. The results will still come. You just need to be patient. So, time has passed. But how do you know your black gold is finally ready to use? Well, mature compost has 3 unmistakable signs that you won't confuse with anything else. First, look at its colour and structure. Finished compost is a rich, dark, almost black colour, uniform and beautifully crumbly. You won't be able to spot any individual leaves or stems. Everything will have broken down into a single, loose mass, much like premium potting soil. Second, consider the volume. Your compost pile will have significantly reduced in size, shrinking by about 2 or even 3 times its original volume. It will have visibly settled. And third, the most important and arguably most delightful indicator, the smell. Forget any hint of rot or ammonia. Properly mature compost has the fresh scent of spring. It evokes the aroma of damp, rich forest earth after a gentle rain. It's a pleasant, vibrant, and utterly earthy fragrance. If you see, feel, and smell all 3 of these characteristics, then congratulations. Your fertility factory has successfully produced its first batch of top-tier, quality product. But what if something isn't quite right? There's no need to despair. almost any issue can be easily fixed. Imagine this scenario. You approach your compost pile, eager for that rich, earthy aroma, but instead you're greeted by a strong, unpleasant, ammonia smell, reminiscent of an unkempt chicken coop. What does that mean? That's your compost pile sending out an SOS. It's practically shouting, "I can't breathe and I'm drowning in nitrogen." This distinct odour is a sign that you've likely added too many greens, your nitrogen-rich materials, and there isn't enough air circulation within the pile. The solution is very simple. Grab a pitchfork and give the entire pile a good, thorough turn. After that, mix in plenty of brown, dry materials, things like dry leaves, straw, wood chips, or shredded cardboard. These will absorb excess moisture, provide essential structure, and allow much-needed oxygen to penetrate. Within a couple of days, that unpleasant smell should disappear. But sometimes you encounter the opposite problem. A week or two goes by, you check your pile, and it's still cold, as if you just built it yesterday. No signs of activity, the composting process clearly isn't happening. What could be the reason? Usually, there are two main culprits. The first, and most likely, is that your pile simply doesn't have enough moisture. It's dried out. Remember, bacteria aren't camels. They need water to do their job. The fix is simple. Grab your hose and thoroughly drench the entire pile until it feels as moist as a well-wrung sponge. The second possible cause is a lack of green materials or nitrogen. Perhaps you added too many brown components and the microorganisms simply don't have the nitrogen they need to kickstart their activity. In this scenario, add some fresh grass clippings, kitchen scraps, or a bit of chicken manure to the pile. Then mix everything thoroughly. This will be like a vital fuel top-up that will get the process going. And now, for the grand finale, you've got a whole wheelbarrow full of rich, crumbly, living compost. So what's next? This is the ultimate all-purpose fertilizer. You simply won't find anything better. In spring, when planting vegetables like tomatoes, peppers, or zucchini, add 1 or 2 generous handfuls directly into each planting hole. This will give your plants a powerful head start and provide them with sustained nutrition. Finished compost also makes an ideal mulch. Spread a 3 to 5 centimetre layer around your plants, shrubs, and even trees. This mulch won't just slowly release vital nutrients with every rain. It will also help retain soil moisture, protect roots from overheating, and effectively suppress weed growth. You can also simply broadcast it over your garden beds before tilling or digging, which will significantly improve soil structure and fertility. Essentially, you're returning to the earth what you've taken, but in its absolute best, most concentrated form. But the truly amazing moment isn't just when you see the finished product. The real mind shift happens in spring. You approach the spot where just last autumn there was an unsightly pile of plant waste. You plunge your hand into it, and instead of something slimy and decaying, you feel a gentle warmth. You scoop out a handful of loose, living earth, rich with the scent of a forest floor. In that moment, you understand you've witnessed and participated in a true miracle. You haven't simply disposed of waste. You've closed the circle of life right there in your own garden. You've taken what has died and transformed it into vibrant fertility, into pure energy for new life. This changes everything. You're no longer just a consumer, simply taking a harvest from the earth. You become its partner, nurturing it and giving back. So, don't discard those priceless autumn treasures. Turn them into black gold that will rejuvenate your soil and reward you with abundant, healthy harvests. It's the simplest, most effective way to truly bring your garden to life. Thank you for watching until the end. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on new gardening secrets. Now, a question for you. Do you have any composting tricks of your own? Perhaps you add a secret ingredient. Share your tips in the comments below. Let's learn from each other.